Hey y'all, thanks for popping in today. I want to spend some time with you talking about college majors. So think about this. A lot of colleges these days are asking 17-year-olds essentially, what do you want to be when you grow up? And in some cases, you better have an answer because we're going to admit you based on the major, or not admit you, based on the major that you indicate on your application. What does all of this mean? So let's unpack it a little bit. Students who are applying to colleges these days, especially, this is going to apply mostly to larger public institutions, are often being asked to indicate their first and second choice major on the application. So I'd love to know, if you all were here in a room with me, I would ask for a show of hands, how many of you out there are doing what you have an undergraduate degree in specifically? And I suspect some people will raise their hands, but I suspect there'd be a fair amount who did not or would not because they're doing something different than what their undergraduate degree was in. Then I would also ask the question, how many of you declared that major when you were applying to college? If you're in my generation, which is several years removed from college at this point, you didn't have to do that. We went to college and we figured it out. We took our gen ed classes. I actually went to a small liberal arts college, which was the entire point of that education, was to have a broad background across all disciplines. And then I majored in economics, which I don't use on a regular basis now because I figured out down the line that I did not want to get a PhD in economics and teach at the university level. So I went back to college for my master's degree, I should say, and majored in education and higher education leadership specifically, which I also don't technically do now that I'm a college counselor and running my own business. But nevertheless, my point in all of this is I think it's so unfair that we are putting this pressure on teenagers, 17, 18, sometimes 16-year-olds, to have a real sense of what it is they want to be when they grow up, and feeling like this choice is so impactful on their application for admission. So the question is it that impactful? So it depends. And again, if you follow along, you know that it depends is the answer to 99 probably percent of the questions that come up in this profession, because it's dependent upon each university in terms of how they manage their process. So there are some schools where you're being asked, what do you intend to major in? And it is really more about fact-finding. They are just kind of looking at a general sense of numbers, who's coming in, what percentage of them are saying they want to major in business, what percentage say communications, what percentage are English or history or psychology majors, those kinds of things. However, there are other schools, universities, where they're asking that question and it is very much making an impact on admissions decisions. So, in other words, you may have a harder time as a student being admitted to a particular major because it just is a more competitive major and there are more people applying for it, and you're going to need better statistics than your friend who applies to a different major potentially at the same university. So it adds a level of stress and confusion and anxiety that I really wish we could remove from the process. But since we can't, my advice is always this. First of all, well, I've got a few things to say, which is not unusual. But first of all, it is true that there are some majors that if you don't start out in them, typically that would be things like engineering is a big one specifically, then you can't start out in something else and transfer in to engineering. That's not universally true, but that's an example. So it feels very daunting to students who think, I kind of am interested in something like engineering, but if I don't go for it right now, how am I going to get into it down the road? The flip side of it is, in most cases, engineering is one of the more difficult majors to be admitted to. So then that adds a layer of stress to their process in terms of, this is what I think I want to do, but you're making it very stressful for me to test the waters, figure it out, and then change my mind if I want to or need to down the road. The other thing that is true is that, or let me say it a different way, there's a myth out there that it's really a disadvantage if you are undecided when a college is asking you for indication of major. Again, it depends on the school. Some schools are fine with that. Some schools specifically have something you select, first year studies or exploratory studies, something like that, because you are undecided. But then our students start to feel like this is putting them at a disadvantage because they don't have an answer to the question. And I'm sorry, again, 16, 17, 18-year-olds may not know yet what they actually want to do. And I, again, wish I could change it. Think it's unfair that we're asking them to indicate this early on in the process. So what's the point of my rant today? Really, it is, as parents, trusted adults, guardians, mentors, whoever we are in the lives of our teenagers, help them understand that it really is okay if they don't know specifically. Does that maybe mean that a certain school isn't the right fit for them because it's asking them to declare super early in this process? Absolutely. Absolutely. Not every college should be applied to just because it falls within your geographic area or it fits the size criteria that you're looking for. It may not be the best fit. If you truly are an undecided applicant, it may not be the best fit. Having said that, there are still going to be students who want to pick something and absolutely want to apply. So also support them through that part of the process. Okay, absolutely, you have an interest in engineering, then by all means you need to indicate that and say that that is your first choice, but know that it's increasing the competitiveness of your particular application. Business and nursing, things that are increasingly more difficult to be admitted to, those are going to have impacts. That doesn't mean you shouldn't try, but all it is doing, all this does, the whole process, is just, again, adding layers of difficulty and pressure and confusion that our students need help navigating. The other part of what we do as counselors is try to help students see that there may not be only one, in fact, very rarely is there only one path to what it is they ultimately want to do. So even, for example, using business as the big umbrella, lots of students come to us and say, I want to major in business. Well, what do you actually want to do within that? Being a business major in finance is very different than entrepreneurship, for example. So what is it that you really want to do? And to the extent that you know, then you get even more specific in your application when it comes to all of that. The other thing that is increasingly important when it comes to these universities that really do admit by major is they're asking students to explain why they've picked their particular major. So students need to have some exposure to various things in engineering or business, those kinds of things that can help them articulate why they're picking a particular major. So now we're adding another layer to them, something they have to figure out while they're in high school so that they can say it back to the colleges so that the colleges understand why they're selecting their particular major. Again, lots to navigate when it comes to all of this. And once again, it doesn't apply at every school. It doesn't even apply at every school that asks the question on the application. But my team of professionals understands what schools are absolutely admitting by major, how they read within that process of a first choice and a second choice major, and we're helping students understand how to maximize their application process by understanding that information, because again, it varies from school to school. I'll go back and say this one more time for those who didn't hear it. If a student is truly undecided, but they are interested in a university that is very specifically asking them for a major up front, it may not be the right place for them to apply. They may really be better off picking a place where they have very low pressure, low stakes of going in, being told they have until the end of their sophomore year or whatever the case may be to make a decision, because that can be really freeing and allow them to study a lot of different things in the general ed requirements and things like that before they are committed to anything in particular. So I'm going to get off my soapbox because I could go on and on about this, because it's one of the things that really bothers me about this process. We're asking students to know a lot about what kind of major and career they potentially want to have when college is the means to that end, as far as I'm concerned. It shouldn't be all these activities and things that they have to do in high school to prove that they want to be a major in a particular field. but we are there in some cases. And so if you're about to embark on this process and you have questions about this, my team and I are here to help. We love to help students navigate and families through all of this, and we would love to talk to you about it.